a lot of these folks, they don't realize how rough life is. Okay, especially the ones that's sheltered. You don't realize exactly how tough it is out here in these streets. A lot of people are scrounging together their last bit of money to literally pay rent. They're scrounging up their last little bit of money to buy something to eat. They're scrounging up their last bit of money to start paying back on things they already are late on paying. Talking about you gonna quit your job because your boss is mean. Honey, you would not survive. You would not survive at the jobs I've had, because I've had some hell of bosses. I used to work at a fast food restaurant, and there was this big old guy. He was a regional manager, and his whole thing was, he came in and he was the biggest asshole. And when I said this, I'm pun intended, because he was quite the large man. We called him Santa Claus, but he was not jolly. This man was not jolly in any sense of the word. And he would literally go there and he would be so rude to the folks that work there, threatening to fire them, which I think that's a real reason to be upset, right? If somebody's crying over being at their job, getting threatened with losing your livelihood, I can understand why somebody would cry over that. So he would literally go in and just make the whole entire environment so messed up and scary and just unpleasant. And he was very rude, and he would make people cry. He would actually do that. But you dry them tears and you get back to work. Okay, because at the end of the day, the store is still open. People got to get served. Like, you got to do what you got to do. But a lot of the younger generation, they have been coddled to the point where you say anything that's slightly critical, ever so slightly critical of them, and they melt. They melt like butter left out in the Georgia sun. Let's be so for real here. And I don't want to harp too much on the kids themselves, because, well, they're not kids anymore technically, because a lot of them are grown adults behaving this way. But I don't want to harp on them too much, because at the end of the day, this problem stems from the adults that raised them. That's where the problem happened. And we're going to go all the way in on why this is. And that's not to say that all Gen Zers are like that. I'm not saying that. You know, technically Justin is a Gen Zer. Technically, he's the very beginning of Gen Z. But, you know, he's not like that at all. That man tough. So it's not all, but enough to the point where, again, pattern recognition. Okay, we start to notice some things, and this goes across races. This is not a racialized issue. This is happening with all the races, and I'm talking specifically in America. I don't know entirely what's going on in the other countries, but specifically here in America, we have a problem with this, and it extends beyond, okay, beyond race. Mercedes Rivera, you said the 499 Super, and you said, there are people who call their parents abusive because their parents said no about buying them makeup or a console. Yes, yes, yes. They take you telling them no for buying them some BS. They take you telling them no for buying them some BS as abuse. You know, and they use that word so loosely. Right? Like, they use, as someone who's actually been in an abusive situation, they use that word very loosely. And it's quite insane. But yeah, thank you so much for the super. And I'm glad y'all are feeling me. You know, I mean, we have JB Trenches. Wait, actually, I think you're agreeing with me. Oh wait, maybe you're not. I don't know what you're talking about, JB Trenches. I don't know what you're talking. I'm gonna just let you do what you're doing. You said there's nothing wrong with being 30, still living in your parents. But in this economy, I'm gonna be honest. In this economy, I personally don't have an issue with that. This economy is something new. Okay, when you live in, I reacted to something about this last night. When you're living in a society where the average house is like $400,000 and they're expecting you to pay $5,000 a month in mortgage, most people can't afford that. And if you do get something cheaper, it's in a very bad neighborhood. It's not safe. It's a rinky-dink shed. It's not even a house. It's a shed. So I personally don't have an issue with the idea of living in family households. You know what I mean? So like, if multiple generations, and this is what a lot of like immigrants do, multiple generations will be living in the same house. And they'll all help pay the bills and things like that. And I think that's a good system, especially under the economy that we have. I don't see anything wrong with that at all. Honestly, that's how I feel. If the economy is still jacked up when my kids are older, I'm not pushing them out of the house. I'm not doing that. As long as they're still being productive adults within society, they're, striving for something, not just sitting on my couch, they can stay with me as long as they want to. Hell, if they get married and they want to stay, I'm cool with that too, because like I said, the economy is effed up. As long as we're all working and pitching in to keep the house functioning, I'm cool with it. JB Trencher says that's the plan for you don't want to grow up. Shoot, growing up is overrated. Growing up is overrated, but it's a necessary evil. We all have to do it eventually. Society is not what it was 50 years ago. Like, society is not what it was, hell, 15 years ago. Things have gotten so rough out here. We have to be mindful of that before we start judging folks for living with their parents. I'm not going to sit over here and judge that. I'm not. I want to talk more about parenting styles. Okay, parenting styles that lead to this soft generation. And it's not even just the parents, it's the schools. When you have parents that are overprotective of their child's feelings, right? Like, I feel like with my generation, we got the complete opposite. Our parents didn't give a damn how we felt. They didn't, you were supposed to be seen, not heard. Whereas now everything is just, how do you feel? Oh, your feelings. I need to make sure I tiptoe around your feelings. I need to make sure I take care of your feelings. I need to make, your feelings, to the point where all they think about is how I feel and not the reality of a situation. So you have a lot of parents, and I believe a majority of them are either Gen Xers, millennials, okay, that are raising these soft-ass kids because they grew up with, narcissist parents, most likely, that didn't give a damn about what they were thinking. And so now they're going to right the sins of their parents. They're going to right the sins, of their parents and fix it with their kids. And so what they end up doing is overcorrecting a problem. Because I agree, the older generations, I do have issues with the way that we were raised. And talking on my specific situation, I definitely have issues with the way I was raised. With that being said, you don't overcorrect, right? We look at it, we see what was done right. Because at the end of the day, I have my issues, but I do think that I was raised with some common damn sense. So you see where things went right, you see where things could be improved, and then you find that sweet spot where you're not completely rejecting everything your parents did because you're still butthurt about getting whooped as a kid. Or, going full circle where it's like, well, I grew up like this, so I'm going to raise my kids like this, even though you're causing generational trauma to continue. There's a sweet spot in between there. Fix the things that truly need to be fixed, but you still hold on to some of those rearing techniques that are effective. Okay? And with my children, specifically like my children, I'm going to do a blend of both. Okay? You getting old school and new school. Okay, my whole thing is this. There needs to be that baseline of respect. And yes, there has to be some form of fear there because, in society, that's how things work. The reason why people don't go out and just commit crimes like in mass is because there's a fear of retribution. There's a fear of going to jail. There's a fear of all sorts of things. So fear is necessary. But I don't think it has to be the whole thing, the whole enchilada. There has to be a little bit of fear there with that respect. Because if there's no fear there, what reason will they have to respect your word if you're not going to do anything about it? If they disrespect you, if they're not doing what they're supposed to do, they're not listening, if they don't have any fear of something happening because they're not listening, then they're just going to keep testing your gangsta. That's what's going to happen. They will continue to test your gangster, and before you know it, you're going to snap. And when you snap, it's going to be even worse than if you were to just whoop their butt when you're not you're not emotionally upset, but you know that the behavior needs to be corrected. I feel like, some of these parents, what will happen is, they'll try that soft parenting, and when that doesn't work and a child is a menace, then they snap. And then they end up really hurting their kid. There has to be a balance. And I think where, the generations that raised me, and those around my age group, where they kind of dropped the ball was not really talking to us. It was more so do as I say. That's really what they did. They were just like, you're going to do as I say, as opposed to really explaining why these things are important. I understand that, oh, the child's place, things like that. I understand that within certain contexts, but you have to talk to your kids and you have to explain to them why things are the way that they are. Don't just say, do as I say, and then don't give the follow-up of the real world application to instill that drive within yourself to literally like go out and live your life in an according way. Like there has to be balance. I personally am team whoop them kids up to a point, right? Because the last thing you want to do is just to make whooping everything. That's not at all the only way you should raise your kids. I feel like when they're still forming their ability to rationalize, then maybe you need to be whooping them, because that's the only deterrent that you really have. And then you need to establish that hierarchy, right? You need to establish that hierarchy within the home. You're going to listen to what I'm saying. You're not going to be sitting here disrespecting me and not following orders when it comes to keeping you safe. That's a big part, keeping you safe, because if your child's not going to listen to you when you get into a situation where they need to listen to you quite literally to stay alive, then you're going to end up with a lot of problems and your child could get hurt. So I think that establishing that boundary there, that you're gonna follow the rules of my house, establishing that with some spanking, I think that's okay. But then once they get older and you're able to rationalize and talk to them, then that's when you need to start phasing out the belt and start coming in with more conversations. Start coming in, talking to them, getting them to understand, getting them to explain to you why things are important, getting them to see real life applications for the things you're teaching them. So I think there has to be a blend. Right. That's how I truly feel about that. You asked, am I millennial or Gen X? I am a tail end of millennial. Yeah, I'm a tail end of millennial. JF says, the problem isn't gentle parenting. It's lazy hands-off parenting. I agree. I feel like some people will take on that term. They'll say, oh, I'm just gentle parenting, but it's just, they're using that to, I guess, bastardize what gentle parenting is supposed to be. So they will quite literally be lazy, not doing what they're supposed. I've seen this too with unschooling, right? Oh, I'm just gonna let my child learn, off the cuff whenever they decide to learn things. It's just, you just being lazy and you put it under the stupid title of unschooling. And I'm gonna be homeschooling my kids, but you can't just say, oh, whenever you feel like learning a math problem, then we'll just learn it at that moment. Like, no, there has to be structure to their learning environment, and it should be tailored to the child, if we're being honest. When it comes to raising kids and things like that, we have to understand this is a societal issue, because a lot of people be like, well, that's not your kid, mind your business. But it's like, I am going to mind your business too, because my child has to grow up and live in the world with your child. And if your child is a menace to society, guess what? My child now has to deal with that. So I don't believe in that idea of, to each their own when it comes to raising kids, because at the end of the day, we have a civilized society and there needs to be a baseline of how you conduct yourself. And if we don't have that, we quite literally don't have society, right? We don't have rule and order. I do think that we all as a community need to work together to make sure these kids aren't growing up to be menaces to society. Like, let's be so for real. Kathleen says some kids need spankings, others you could be corrected easier without it. You need to know your child. Thank you. Absolute facts. You need to know your child. Thank you so much. I love that comment. I absolutely love that comment. Know your child. And see, this kind of leads into another part that I talked about in that video, where back in my day, you didn't have parents coming to the school cussing out the teachers, saying my child would never. Whole time their child definitely does. Okay, their child does everything the teacher is saying that they're doing. But you have the society now where, like I said, these millennial parents, they grew up and they were mad that their parents didn't stick up for them in school because their teacher called them out on their BS, because they were probably engaging in some BS. And then they want to correct the sins of their parents. So they go up to the school and cuss the teacher out. That's why you will never catch me working in a public school. I do things private, right? I will work in a private sector when it comes to education because I do have a background in education. But I will not be doing no public school because you ain't coming to the school cuss me out because your badass kid making me have to call you. Trust, I don't want to have to call you over something like this. But if I have to, understand it's because your child earned it. Your child definitely did those things. And, you know, it's just it's crazy how their kid will act a damn fool at the house, but then they want to believe that their child is an angel at school. Your child disrespects you. What do you mean? And you don't think they're out here disrespecting everybody else? It started at home. These problems started at home. There's very few cases where I believe the child acts one way at home and then is a menace at school. Like that is a very rare situation. More times than not, that behavior is consistent, right? But people want to act deaf, dumb, and blind. And rather than handling their child and correcting their child, they'd rather go cuss the teacher out. Absolutely not. Gray Alien says, my mom's letting my cousins live with them, 30, but act like they're 15, can't stop getting fired because they don't take work seriously and they use her for her roof. Yeah, I don't agree with that. They be out. They be out. There's no way. There's no way. There's a difference between living with your parents and building something or working towards something versus living with your parents and having no ambition whatsoever, not trying to grow up, not trying to change things, basically leeching off of your parents. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that at all. JF says, yes, and they ain't doing shit. I agree. They're not doing shit. They literally will have these titles, gentle parenting, unschooling, the whole time they ain't doing a damn thing. Kenneth says, you also got those parents who hand their kids iPads at age 4. Now, I do think that there is a space for technology because we live in a technological world. There is a space for it. But if you're just letting your child have social media and they're scrolling through TikTok, it's not like an educational game. It's not like a game where they're actually learning something or, you know, hand-eye coordination with the game or anything that's like actually stimulating their mind, then yes, that is a huge problem, and then, you know, you shouldn't let them have the screen the entire time. That's crazy. They need to be out in the real world. Riza said, I hand my nieces my tablet to teach them digital art. They are under 6. Yeah, that's gonna stimulate their mind, right? That's gonna stimulate their mind. But if you are literally just handing your child a device so they can mindlessly scroll through TikTok, then you're rotting their brain. There is this, oh my God, you know, I wasn't going to pull anything up, but I actually might pull something up. There is this thing called cappuccino or cappuccina. Let me see if I can find this. Cappuccino ballerino or ballerina. Y'all, there is this stuff called like the cappuccino ballerina, and you see stuff like this. Your child is literally scrolling through TikTok and they're watching this mindless garbage. Like, what is this? This is like a real thing that kids are watching. Is this, why does he have the Naruto? I just know that. Why does he have the Naruto? That's crazy. But you see that, like, what is this? This is what the kids are watching on TikTok. This is what the kids are watching on TikTok. This AI bull. And look, I'm not completely against AI, but it's just like, this is what the kids are watching. This sick, weird, like, and of course they don't have an understanding of like society or the real world. And like, what is this? So these parents that are just giving their iPad, like, can you imagine watching stuff like this and your brain is still developing? Like, you have no sense of the world at all, and this is what you're watching. Like, it's weird, but it's just like they're scrolling through these things, and that's not even the worst of it. Let's be so for real here. That's not even the worst of it, but that's just a taste of the type of stuff that they have on social media for kids to watch. And no wonder their brains are being rotted. Let's be so for real here. All of this is very disturbing. It's extremely disturbing. JF, exactly. That's what I was thinking when I first saw it. What the fuck is this? It's absolutely insane.